In this presentation, we'll look at some specific examples of performance assessments, some that might take your kids a week to do, in which case you'd have one rubric to guide them through the week. Some which might take your kids 1 or 2 days to do, and some which might take longer. And scheduling a course during this time really depends on how much contact your kids give you, how close you are to them in their work. And it's difficult to know that until we get in, we meet our kids, and we start the NTI process.
Absolutely. Can you click on that hide button for me? You see it on your screen?
Yes.
Yep. And then closed captions would be great. And if you'll,
nothing better than watching the closed captions.
I know. Well, and I'm going to make you do one more thing. If you'll click that again and put them at the top, it's easier for our viewers to see them at the top position. Yep, you got it.
All right. Well, let's get started. I don't know if I got too much for 30 minutes, but here we go. And luckily, we've heard about now rubrics, descriptive feedback, and performance assessment in context of other sorts of demonstrations. So that might make parts of this go a little faster. But what you see on this screen are the topics we're going to cover. The purpose of performance assessment's been described often with some metaphors. One of them is the sports metaphor. A coach knows that if a kid takes a multiple choice test about playing soccer, it's not going to give him nearly enough information to know how well the kid's able to do it. It's much better to watch him perform it in scrimmage or in the game, and both. We also know that soccer players get bored in practice only. So in order to keep them engaged in getting better at soccer, put them in the game, let them do the real thing. Performance tasks are very similar. It's about taking kids and letting them practice their skills, academic and disciplinary skills, but then giving them a chance to put them in the game and play and do what scientists do what social scientists do what mathematicians really do what engineers really do. It's about helping kids apply their learning, as was stated with the paint metaphor about 30 minutes ago. This link will take you to Jay McTighe's website and blog. He loves this soccer metaphor, and Jay McTighe has done a lot of work on formalizing performance assessment. Another group that's done a lot of work on formalizing performance assessment, that is just telling us what the parts of it are, is Envision Learning Partners, and we've worked with them in the district too. And their favorite metaphor is the driver's test metaphor. We don't want people driving after taking simply a multiple choice test. It might be dangerous, and you can't really see if a person can drive by bubbling bubbles. So we let them perform it and show it, and then that is used as the true assessment. Performance assessments are operating on the same assumptions, that multiple choice test scores don't show us how well kids can apply their learning in an authentic way. Also, why is the bigger context of assessment, which was well brought out in the last 30 minutes. It might suffice to say that performance assessment can augment all of these. If a kid does performance assessment, they'll have evidence to show at an exhibition. They'll have evidence of learning to use in a student-led conference. They'll have evidence of learning to use in a defense. So these four have some overlap between them, and they all kind of work together. Principles. So what are some of the principles or big ideas we think about when we design performance assessment? I'm going to start with equity. It's often been noticed that performance assessment is a good way to get your kids, it's a good way to get you as a practitioner, as a teacher, to share power with your kids, to help them make decisions, use their voice, make their choices, use their agency about what are the problems we see, what can we do to help solve these real problems. And then as a skillful teacher, you can take their interest, their problems, their what they care about, and you can turn that into a learning experience which leads to them demonstrating academic and disciplinary learning. So as you plan performance assessment, these 5 questions come from the ARE, and this is a link to it. And they are 5 things to consider from our DEP department, 5 things to consider when we design any kind of learning. And performance assessment tends to be a place it's easy to build these things in. We'll start with inquiry, you'll see, and many other, and on all these other things. Another set of principles comes from CCE. We've seen these already. Let's talk about where they appear. If you are planning a performance assessment, of course, we're going to backwards plan it. We're going to start with the purpose. And that means we're going to start by looking at what kind of skills the disciplinary contents expect kids to be able to show. What are the 21st century skills we want kids to show? 21st century skills is another way to say backpack skills or success skills. And then the teacher also considers what kind of criteria could I see that would provide for me evidence that students have that ability. So a teacher is going to consider the blue things first. What are the skills and what will it look like? And then they'll consider the green. This is a little more to the student's point of view. This is what we mean when we say student. This is part of what we mean when we say student-centered, that we consider their point of view on and the meaning they make out of their experience. So is it open-ended and relevant to the world? And does it result in original products or solutions? A good teacher or a good PLC can come up with a connection between these four characteristics and these four elements of a performance assessment. Once they've done that, they also want to design a process so that it's fair and culturally responsive. And this also goes to the purpose of the work too. Is it responsive to the culture of your students? Can they relate to it? Does it feel real and authentic to them? Does it come from them? And then requiring application and transfer of learning. That is, can we apply our skills in different contexts throughout the process of the work?
Hey, Justin.
Can I use multiplication to find the area of the rectangle on a worksheet and in the field and in a essay question or on a short answer question and on a blueprint map? Transfer our skills to different contexts.
Hey, Justin. We have a question real quick in the chat. Is there a slide deck or a template for the rubric design?
Yes. That's a different 30 minutes conversation. We have, the short answer is yes, and I would start by looking at the resource website that will have linked at the back or linked in Maddie and Joe's, or it's Deeper Learning.
I'll put it in the chat.
The answer is yes, and I'll have to get that to you, or keep an eye on PD for the rubric design presentation, right? Maybe that's one we need to make and have on the show next week. That's
okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, technology. So let's talk a little bit. So far, we haven't specifically mentioned NTI. Let's talk a bit about NTI and technology. So the JCPS is providing and honing in on these particular technology tools that they'd like teachers to use more often than not and become familiar with. It helps take stress off of parents when there are fewer technology tools to learn and help their kids use. In a performance assessment, oftentimes the initial work, that is establishing the purpose of the work, happens through chats and through the classroom. The Google Classroom has got the stream page, incredibly useful for having conversations, asynchronous ones, with your students about what's going on in their lives and letting you kind of look into their experience and see what's going to hook them in a performance assessment. When it comes to products and performances, shared documents, shared slide docs are very flexible. They are a bit between a word processor and a graphic design tool, so they can be used to make a lot of different products, as well as screencastifying Google Meets. Performances can be done on live chats with friends. Success criteria and rubrics can be provided through Docs and Classroom. And don't forget, those rubrics are best used when they are done with kids, come from kids, and come in part of the process. So we'll put it there too. And then the process itself may include Jamboard early in the phases, using Jamboard to help kids develop concepts and brainstorm ideas, Screencastify for flipped classrooming, rubrics, and then some conversations. And then this resource, Gale, it's a resource about, it's a database of thousands of documents, primary source documents, photographs, newspapers. It might not hurt to go and look to see what Gale offers as far as source documents that students can use to help go through the process too. The point of this is to show you that it doesn't come through any one technology, but it comes through skillful choosing and use of all the different technologies that we have available for kids to have an experience of going through this performance assessment that's connected and meaningful. Pre-made models. Let's look at some models that you can go use right now. So this will get into a little bit of resources that you might go for. Okay, Think Circa. That is a program that the district has provided to all of us. And it has several different features, but one of them is this writing modules by theme. And this is very much like on-demand writing, as was given as an example of performance assessment previously. And in that on-demand, it's not called on-demand writing, it's literally called this writing modules by theme. This is a link. You click on the link, it'll take you there. You'll have to log in. But it will take students through a process that looks like this. It'll first, and I apologize for the small text, but it'll first give the kids an essential question. In this one, it is, what events were most important in leading the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965? It'll then ask them a question to connect it to their life. They'll type in the little box, a connection to their life. It'll then walk them through a process where they first read the text, answer multiple choice quiz about it to test for comprehension, then go back, highlight in the text pros and cons to a particular position that they will be expected to take. That is, in this case, what are the most important events? Then it has them do a bit of synthesis, summarize what they've read, and then it has them build an argument. And that's what CIRCA stands for. It's an acronym, claim, evidence, reason, and then I think counter argument is CA at the end. But it wants students to be able to think and write in that sort of a pattern. And it's a good, steady pattern that works interdisciplinarily. You'll hear the social studies department often talk about claims, evidence, and reasoning. Science, you can see it through and through science and in writing too. So build a claim, state a claim, reasoning, evidence, and it walks the students through each one. They type in the little boxes. At the end, it gives the students back their work. It shows them what they've highlighted. It shows them their own personal connection. It shows them the claims, evidence, and reasoning that they've stated, and then it expects them to now take all this and put it together in an essay that is that's organized this way. Also, there's a rubric involved in the website too. So you put a student on here, you give them an assignment, and the whole process is scaffolded tightly for them. There are benefits to this method. There are drawbacks to this method, but it's good for us to see that this method exists online to walk kids through a process. As you can see, not a lot of choice or not a lot of student co-creating the experience, but highly scaffolded and very well structured to help kids think. On another end of a spectrum, there's work coming out of expeditionary learning education. Some of us use our curriculums. This isn't so much, this website's not so much for kids to go to. The previous one was. This is more about teachers. And this just has an example, a collection of what they call projects at home. During NTI time, they're providing lots of simple examples of work that they expect kids to be able to use to spur on their own creativity. So this performance assessment is as simple as this. Create a drawing of and a poem about a pet you love, and then giving them an example. And that's just about all that EL provides on the site. As you can see, this also has some benefits and some drawbacks. I'll let you imagine those for yourself. You can see what's missing, but when we talk about performance assessment, there's a wide range of ways to approach it and qualities of it. A third example is, it comes out of McTighe, and he gives us specific questions to ask ourselves when we're giving kids a performance assessment: the goal, the role, the audience, the situation, the product performance. It also is has these pieces you see. It states a goal for the students. It states for them a situation. It tells them their role. You can see where we can see how much kids have control over these things. It tells them their audience, their product, and their performance. Not a bad model. Could be improved, but a good place to start. Co-created models. These are more like how do teachers go to their students and with their students co-create a performance assessment. We're going to look at two models of this. Two examples, one very complicated that a teacher would have to have really good facility with NTI to do, and one more simple so that you can see a spectrum of models. Going into this, a teacher is going to think about these things that we're going to organize by levels of blooms. We want during a performance assessment or any experience our kids have to have some high-level blooms work. We want some creation, some evaluation, and revisions. We also want some middle-level blooms work. We want them to be analyzing other work, questioning, applying their learning. We also want low-level blooms work. They need to be learning new facts, exploring, doing simple research. So we're going to consider these three levels. We're also going to consider the backwards planning notion that we want to that kids need to go through an experience which they have a purpose. It leads them to a product they're going to create through a process. So we're going to look at both at the same time. This is a generic example of a way a teacher might think about a week in NTI. First, we're going to set the purpose. That is, going to find a question the kids want to research. The tech might be Jamboard. And then we're going to begin learning about the topic in the afternoon. Teachers thinking this is Monday AM, this is Monday PM. This is Tuesday AM, this is Tuesday PM. At the end of the day, kids are expected to communicate with their teacher. That is, send me an email, put something in the stream that explains the question, the solution I will want to do, what I need feedback on. Go back and look more specifically later, but this is the way a teacher might think it through. 1 week might be too short a time to do a performance assessment. So it might be broken over 2 weeks. It's the same information, just now we do one step every day because students are doing other work during NTI too. Now let's look at two sort of examples. The first is the complex one. In this case, the teacher is working through a Louisville African American Museum will be the journey through history. So there's online resources about the African American Museum that's planned to open up downtown. She has resources around the DEP and Vision Equity books. So some online resources and then a question, who might be featured in the museum, who might not be included. So once again, we're helping kids buy into the purpose, and the teacher helps them work through some early reading, some research, some primary, secondary source research, rough drafts, rubrics, through and through till the day on Friday when they show their final product, which in this case, remember now this is a co-designed thing, so the kids have a lot of voice in what would we do here on Tuesday, discuss what we might create. A window poster, a site, slides, social media campaign, so that kids have a bigger voice here in what will the final product be like that will demonstrate their learning. And also in this model, each one of these slides is linked to a specific slide. The teacher just uses to plan out what they're going to do on each day or what the parts of the work are. Complex, lots of asynchronous and synchronous things happening there at the same time. So on the other end of things, there may be a simple model for a performance assessment that could happen online. This happens simply in classroom where the teacher provides a Jamboard where kids ask whatever question they want. The teacher helps organize the questions. The teacher gives them back resources in terms of just reading resources and videos to help the kids learn the answers to the questions they want to answer. The teacher provides examples of work, for example, a Google Sites and a Google Slide that are simple, things kids can use to model their own work after. And then finally, teachers aware that work at on a performance assessment needs to be a performance in order for kids to demonstrate their learning and have a meaningful audience. So the teacher provides a sign-up sheet. So she's sure that the students have a chance to teach each other. We know in our real-life classrooms that we need our students teaching each other to the extent that they can. This helps kids learn better. This helps identify misconceptions and 1,000 other good things. Let's not lose that when we move to NTI. Remember, we need to give kids a chance to talk to each other and to be the experts on things. So very simple performance assessment model as far as a question kids want to know, resources for them, simple models to show, and then kids will make something to teach their friends and go. Common starting places. All right. So a common starting place for teachers, a common place for their practice to be, is to have an engaging activity or craft. Teachers often have a good bank of, I know these activities are good for kids to do. They love these activities. But this is not what we would call performance assessment, because they may not have a direct connection to the demonstration of disciplinary skills and content standards. As a teacher gets better at designing a performance assessment, they will be able to take what is an engaging final product, what they might use as a product at the end of a unit, and they'll be able to, with their kids, describe what are the specific skills or qualities we want to see come out in this product. And that rubric that they make with kids is directly linked back to the core content. So what you're looking at here is a link to the deconstruction document that the district provides that helps teachers work through what are the parts of the content. As a teacher gets better at designing products that reflect content and filtering the content through a student-friendly, student's point of view, purposeful rubric, as this triangle gets stronger, then the validity of our performance assessments increases. We're actually going to start measuring what we intend to measure. We're going to start seeing the content skills come through the tasks in a very specific and observable and evidenceable way. So if you're just making a fun project at the end, think about how might we use a rubric and the standards to be more specific in that project and dial in a little more content. Another place teachers often start is they have a themed series of assignments. This is going to be Cat Week, and we're going to learn all about cats. And on Monday, we're going to do a play about cats. And on Tuesday, we're going to read about cats. And on Wednesday, we're going to watch videos about cats. And on Friday at the end, we're going to, for our final thing, we're going to draw a picture of a cat. Well, in that, there is no actual continuity between activities. So the kids have essentially done a loosely connected series of themed assignments. It's not terrible, but we can do better when we do performance assessment, because the process kids go through now relies on every step. Our first experiences help the early drafts get made. They help feedback go back to those drafts. And that's a lot of disciplinary and very specific academic work. Next, they go for models. They'll look at a model of high quality work. They'll make a next draft and a tech version. In addition to the specific disciplinary process that might go into making a final product, there is skill practice on the side. If kids are building area models for a blueprint for a garden, they're probably also doing some multiplication skill practice, some repeated addition skill practice simultaneously. Interdisciplinary research folds in, where they're going to read about maybe it's the different sorts of plants and their adaptations that they would put in the garden. And finally, there's community conversations that happen as kids go up through the process. And they are going to meet with people from outside. The principal may tell them that they can't actually design the garden because there's not enough money. This provokes a on-demand writing project in which they write for more money. There's a lot of ways to make the process rich and reliant on the other steps in the process, so kids know that their work every day is meaningful and it adds up to a high-quality final performance or product. Okay, I can't believe I made it through. I'm so proud of myself. I got 3 minutes. Further resources and examples. So for moving forward, if you're interested in any of this, go back through the slides. Most every image you saw was a hot link to further documentation and explanation around the thing. There's also articles and resources around performance assessment linked here, including banks of searchable performance assessments that were populated by the LDC, the MDC, populated by Envision, CCE, a bazillion acronyms of people all over the country trying to build up banks of performance assessments. The JCPS curriculum maps have nice examples too. What you're looking at here is the 8th grade map, in which it describes several different options for really cool performance assessments that you might design and give to your kids, or that you might use as a conversation starter with your kids and design one with them about how they might address the problems described in those performance assessment of the JCPS curriculum map. And finally, here's an article, and this is not a bad brief overview of summative assessment, that is performance assessments in distance learning. He addresses some very good issues, specifically one that I want to leave us with, and it is that sometimes in NTI, we need to move from one big event to a series of smaller events. This is great advice. It's why I showed some examples that were very complex and ones that you could probably pull off in a classroom very easily. But over NTI, it may be more difficult. And so one of the pieces of his advice is, if it looks too complex, scale it back. But don't let that scale you all the way back to some low-level, unmeaningful work for kids. Scale it back to meaningful products made for authentic purposes and truly aligned to specific content and skills, so that kids can demonstrate academic abilities in meaningful ways. That's my email at the bottom. Thanks, Kathleen.
Justin, thank you so much. A lot of comments in the chat about this great information, and I've linked your presentation. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.